Welcome to the On the Call podcast. You're listening to Joe Chambers and Spencer Tomstedt, the podcast for sports broadcasters by sports broadcasters. Now, this is season 2, episode number 5, and yet again, another special guest hailing from North Dakota. We have Jody Norstedt from the
Thank you,
Midco
guys.
Sports.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, Jody, one of the first questions we always ask whenever we have a guest on the podcast is your journey in the industry from St. Cloud University, WDAZ, and WDAY TV. We want to learn about it.
Yeah. So, do you want me to go all the way back to high school and stuff like that, or do you want me to start at college?
Let wherever the journey started. So if that's high school, that's high school.
Well, it started, believe it or not, like every sports broadcaster's, on my mom's treadmill. So there you go. Okay, so here's the story. We had Hot Wheels cars, me and my brother, big into Hot Wheels cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we went to races. Dirt track racing is pretty popular around this region. And we went to dirt track races a lot when we were little, and we'd hear the announcers and we'd be like, oh, that'd be so cool to kind of have that job. So we announced races for our Hot Wheels cars, and we had names for all of our Hot Wheels cars, whether it was Party Animal or Flamo, which was a car with flames on it. Just a bunch of random stuff. And we even had our broadcaster names. I was Harry Scary, named after Harry Carey. And so we had lots of fun. So basically you'd set the race cars up on the top of the treadmill. You wouldn't turn it on. I've seen videos where you turn it on, you kind of do that thing. But we'd put our hand and have like two cars line up next to each other. And then you'd have that little incline or decline, I should say. And then you let them rip and you announce them as they go down. And anyways, so that's kind of where it all first started, just the bug. And then as I grew older, I just became a sports fan, and I decided to be living in the state of Minnesota, a Minnesota sports fan, which is, miserable, absolutely miserable. The 98 Vikings season still rips my heart out that Gary Anderson's only missed field goal was the one that could have sent us to play in the Super Bowl. But I digress. And Brett Favre thrown across his body and too many men in the huddle against the Saints.
Well, Joe, you're going to hate me.
Go
Saints Pack, go.
Oh, go Pack, go.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I don't really appreciate the Packers. I almost hate the Saints more, though, these days. But just because of the Favre stuff and all the cheap shots and the bounty gate. But anyways, so it became just a huge sports fan. And St. Cloud was kind of where a lot of it took off. I went to college, and I'd always kind of wanted to be a sports broadcaster, but I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, no one can just, there are only so many jobs, so I'm not going to be foolish and think that I'm going to be a sports broadcaster someday. So I do the conventional route. I'm going to be a Phi Ed teacher. So I arrive at St. Cloud State, 2004. I graduated high school. And I have my first class, I think it was maybe second semester, my first class within my major of physical education and health. And I walk, really cold on campus, and walk from basically one end of campus to the other, like the farthest walk you can make for an 8 a.m. class with this teacher. And I have my gym bag packed, like, oh man, are we going to play dodgeball or something? And we get in there, and it's a 3-hour lecture, like about health and stuff, and no fun. We're not playing dodgeball anytime throughout that semester or any fun things. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want to do this. And she was yelling at me for having a Mountain Dew. And I'm like, how else am I supposed to stay awake in a 3-hour lecture? So anyways, I say, to heck with it. I'm going to go see what else is around, and literally stumbled upon St. Cloud State's program. And it's one of the best in the country. And you guys have maybe even been exposed to it a little bit, but they do so much with their students. It's a newscast 5 days a week. And you have reporters. It's basically just a half-hour newscast, just like you'd see at any major market TV station. So getting good opportunities there. And then we also all student-run broadcasts for all the live hockey games at St. Cloud State, obviously a big-time program in college hockey. So got experience there working kind of ice side reporting, some behind the scenes stuff. And obviously with UTVS, their campus TV station, just learned so much and absorbed so much in my 4 years there, and just really got involved with everything that I could. We had this half-hour Husky Mag show that aired once a week, where it was a half-hour sports show highlighting, St. Cloud State Husky athletics, football, basketball, whatever it be, doing features and stuff like that and highlights, and just had the time of my life. And I'm like, man, now just think, after I graduate, I'm going to get paid to do this. And so that was cool. So I went and the first job I applied for was in Duluth, Minnesota. I got to be a finalist, and then I got turned down. I was, a bummer, but this young lady got it, and, props to her. But it ended up working out well, because then the next job I applied for, I interviewed and went up to Grand Forks, North Dakota, and met with Pat Sweeney, who had been there since 1980 and recently retired, actually, like this month, from just broadcasting altogether. He was in radio for a little bit here at the tail end, but learned a lot through there. Obviously, UND hockey is massive up in Grand Forks. In the rest of their athletics, UND football, and hockey up there for the high schools is big too. So got to spend about 3-4 years there learning some stuff. Then what happened at that TV station was they stopped doing the weekends out of Grand Forks and combined with their sister station in Fargo, WDAY. So I basically got removed from the weekends, but then I got the job down at WDAY. So I kind of got the weekends back, and became kind of the weekend sports anchor there. Worked there for about 5 years, and continued to enjoy, doing what I do in the North Dakota and Minnesota, kind of the northwest part of Minnesota, covering a lot of high school sports, college. Carson Wentz, he was obviously a big buzz a handful of years ago, covered his college career and even a little bit in high school, and then went and followed him at the NFL draft or the combine. Here's my cat, Nora. She's probably making this more interesting, but yeah, so took that path, covered a lot of special things there. And then in 2017, I started at Midco Sports, and one of the best decisions I ever made. It was tough because I really enjoyed the people I work with at WDAY. But the opportunity not to have to be there for a 10 o'clock newscast every single night was something that was appealing to me. I mean, we broadcast a lot of live events, but it's not like, oh, I need to be there at 10 o'clock, for the 10 o'clock newscast every single night. Yep. So that's been a good change of pace. I'm kind of the North Dakota high school beat guy, but I also fill in a lot of different places. Like I'm calling 8 North Dakota UND men's hockey games this year. I've already called 4, and then I got 4 more. So, and they're obviously one of the number 3, number 2 team in the country right now. So they're humming along. But yeah, that's the long story longer of how I got to Midco Sports, and absolutely enjoy the company. It's a cable. Midco is a cable and internet provider. And then we are kind of under that umbrella where they decided we want to start a sports network. So in South Dakota, North Dakota, Midco Sports has kind of become a regional sports leader, and it's awesome to see the kind of the growth of the company and the network.
Certainly a lot of directions I'd love to go in from that. But as you may or may not know on the show, we like to dive into people's LinkedIns, or if applicable, their Wikipedia pages, which I'm sure you're going to get that eventually. But Jody Norstedt hasn't quite made it up to Wikipedia at this point. But I did want to ask, because we are in the broadcasting realm, and we are on the situation of our vocal cords are our livelihood. In college, you were in concert choir. What did you learn the most from that time in terms of preserving your vocal cords?
Boy, you guys pulled that out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's right on there in your activities and societies.
Oh, that's perfect. Boy, yeah, that's been a while, but I think breathing, choir helps you so much in breathing, because if you're out of breath, you're going to be out of luck when you're trying to sing. So just continue to have that diaphragm, and in your posture. I think that's an important thing when you're broadcasting. Maybe one of those under the radar things, like if you're slouched and calling a game, it's going to be harder to breathe naturally. Yeah. So I think the posture, your facial reactions if you're up there singing like this, no one's going to want to listen. So you want to be animated, and you kind of want to have that, emotion in your face, because if you're not pleasing to look at, people are going to turn off the TV. So I think there is a lot of carryovers, and I give you credit for thinking about that. But now that I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, there are a lot of things that transition, and things that I've worked on in choir, and obviously the voice is obvious. How high can you go on those big plays? Sometimes your voice is going to raise higher. This is an exciting play, or you're keeping it down low or something like that. So that's I think that'd be kind of the easiest way to describe the carryover.
And in college, also notice you mentioned you worked with Husky Mag, and you've done some writing in different aspects. And there's sometimes this notion that kids have in high school of like, when I get to college, I'm not going to have to write, or when I'm out of college, I'm not going to have to worry about writing. There's this kind of misnomer, and especially in our industry, you are going to be writing, whether you're on air or you're off the air or doing any sort of radio shows. There's a lot of writing. There's a lot of notations and things along those lines. So what would you attribute in terms of your experience in writing with the Husky Mag and other experience you've had? How valuable was that for you in preparing you for your role today?
Oh, incredible, guys. I mean, that's why you get involved in, and you don't want to go into college, if you're going to be a broadcaster, and come in with this narrow mind, like, I'm only worried about being on air. Yep. Like, you got to know how to run a camera. You got to know how to write. Get yourself involved. If there's a campus radio station, I worked at the campus radio station, KVSC. Get yourself involved with the newspaper. I didn't have time for that, unfortunately, but we did so much writing, as you mentioned. We had news writing classes, and then those news writing classes they'd go in and write scripts for our daily newscast at the college TV station. And what an opportunity to be able to do that and write that way and get critiqued at the college level versus walking into your first job and, okay, here, write a script. We didn't really do this in my college. So it's just such a huge benefit to be able to continuously get those reps. And we wrote every day. And for the Husky Mag show, that's writing an entire half-hour show.
Yep.
Yes, there are graphics and video elements, but you are writing your script, and you are making sure that what you're writing is not like a news article. You want to pop a little bit. I mean, you don't want to be over the top, and maybe we'll get into this later. I don't want like Sports Center stylish, over the top stuff, but I want stuff that's interesting to the viewer, some humor mixed in there, because I think that's important. If people aren't laughing while they're, watching you and enjoying it, maybe not laughing at you, but laughing with you. I think that's important. So just continuously getting those reps. I mean, there'd be times where me and my buddies in college, we'd be up till 2 a.m. writing for our show and just laughing our butts off. Like, what if we wrote this, just making up random stuff like that you would never possibly want to air on TV. But so I think, just getting those continuous reps and making the most of your time. I mean, if you go to a school with the resources I was fortunate enough to have, but I know there are tons of great broadcasting schools out there. If you're going to one of those schools and you want to do this, take advantage of every opportunity that you can, because you cannot go back. You cannot, once you graduate, it's like, you can't go back and be like, oh, I'm going to do it all over again. No, get involved with everything, because that's going to make that first job that much easier. And it's going to make your ascent that much easier, because you're going to have a leg up on the competition all the way through. You're not learning all those things in your first job because you already did it in college.
Jody, I want to say 2 things before I ask my next question. First things first, when you mentioned about, getting excited while calling a play, just reminds me of Kevin Harlan's call on the radio when the guy was drunk and the Super Bowl is like, this guy is drunk. He's running to the 40. Oh, and he's tackled down. Have a good night in the can, buddy. It's just like, just something like that. And then number 2 was, you talk a lot about, having a good posture. And I really think that that's so important, because if you're, you're like this and you're trying to say something, it's just, the whole energy just shifts. So I really think that was important.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that with the posture or anything, because you also think about, you mentioned Kevin Harlan with him working with the NBA on TNT, like basketball games that you're doing. And I think at some points with even some sideline reporters, you may stand up a little bit on things. But I know like with Tracy Wolfson and March Madness, she's on media row on the opposite side, sitting on a desk. But especially in basketball, you're sitting down courtside. You can't stand up and block those people behind you and calling it. Whereas with football and soccer and even hockey to an extent and other sports, you're standing up the entire time, which genuinely does help your posture. But I didn't even think about that. That's a good insight.
Yeah, and Kevin Harlan, by the way, one of my idols, because he was the broadcaster in the Timberwolves heyday with Kevin Garnett, the big ticket. I mean, that was some unbelievable basketball to watch. And I like Kevin Harlan. I will always look up to him as a top 2 broadcaster in my life. The other one being a local guy in Minneapolis, Twin Cities, Mark Rosen, a guy that I idolized for sure. Those two are above everyone else.
Jody, when you mentioned about writing and how important it is, I actually just started writing part-time for Last Word on Sports, and I just wrote my first article about I particularly focus on the Washington Commanders, even though my favorite team is the Packers. When your girlfriend's a Commanders fan, you're kind of not, I wouldn't say forced, but I start like learning more about the team. So I was writing about who they could, like 2 of their main candidates that they've interviewed. But it's like doing like you say, it's like a broadcast. It's like doing your research. You gotta, I did a lot of research figuring out stats of why each candidate was good. Anyway, getting back on track. You called games, like you said, for North Dakota with their hockey team, and men's hockey just being such a popular sport out in Minnesota and in North Dakota. Excuse me. What that's a fast-paced sport. Like, how do you describe your experience calling that? Because obviously, it's a small puck. They're going back and forth. Like, how is your experience calling that? Because I know you said you had 4 more games you're calling the rest of the year, but how is that experience calling hockey for like a local, really good college hockey team?
You know what? This is a really good question, and it affects me probably more than a lot of other hockey broadcasters. Because, guys, I grew up in the state of hockey, Minnesota, Southwest Minnesota, Montevideo. We didn't have hockey though at my school. We didn't have hockey really around our little pocket of the region. So I never played it. I never skated. I didn't grow up around it. I didn't watch it at all. We didn't have an NHL team for a while until the Minnesota Wild finally came back after the North Stars departed. Shout out Kirill Kaprizov. Got a Kirill Kaprizov shirt underneath.
Oh, nice.
Kirill the
Nice.
Thrill. But anyway, so I didn't grow up around hockey at all. And I go to St. Cloud State, and I attend my first ever in-person hockey game. And I always thought hockey was boring growing up because it was standard definition TV, and that's dating myself. But you're watching like standard definition TV. You can't see the puck. You can't really hear the sounds all that well. And then you go to a game, and it's like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Like the hits right against the boards, the puck, the anticipation building every time, like, oh, so close. And just hearing the crowd, and it's like, this is amazing. Like, how have I never wanted to watch this more? And so I got absolutely hooked. And obviously it helped that we broadcasted all their home games. So I was just around that environment so much. And then going up to Grand Forks for my first job. I mean, you're talking about the Taj Mahal. Ralph Engelstad Arena at North Dakota is better than probably half the NHL rinks. It is, if you guys ever get the opportunity and you have any interest at all, go watch a game at Ralph Engelstad Arena. That it is absolutely crazy. They got a huge donation from the Engelstad family. He built that thing, and there's just marble everywhere. It's just pristine. Anyway, so getting back to your point about just the pace of play, I'm used to like football. You throw the pass, receiver catches it, and then you have some time to warm up for your next call while the analyst provides his analysis. Hockey, you don't have that. And the biggest thing with hockey is if you don't know the names of those players, like front to back, every single number and name, like just off the top of your head, you're going to be swimming. I mean, and you're going to be sinking because you're not going to be able to keep up with play. So that is the most important thing to do, is make sure that you know all the numbers and lines, line combinations, deep pairings, getting all those in your head and just continuing to rehearse throughout the week. Granted, it gets a little bit easier if I'm calling North Dakota hockey, back to back. So at least I have that one team taken care of. And then you're just kind of working on the other team. And when you see the teams every once in a while, but for instance, I called 4 outdoor high school hockey games just after Christmas. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, they did 2 one day and 2 the next. And guys, I don't follow high school hockey at all throughout the season, but we televise this event once every year where it's, so that's 4 games. That's 8 teams that I've never scouted before or anything. And I'm preparing for them pretty much during Christmas break to call those games of 8 teams. That's 8 teams with, 3-4 lines of, forward pairings. And then you got your 2-3 defensive pairings and goaltenders. So it's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And it struggles. And I try to over prepare as much as I can to a fault when it comes to hockey specifically. I put in as much information as I can, obviously the necessary stuff, their height, their points, goals, assists, points. But also I have a little bit of a sidebar information where I'll put in, scored this much last year, or for the college hockey where the stats are more accessible, 7 points in his last 10 games, the last 4 series against Miami, if that's who they're playing, he has not scored a goal. Went and played USHL hockey for the Sioux Falls Stampede, whatever. Just those things that you can kind of have off the top of your head if they have the puck or if they score the goal that that, that ends an 8-game goal drought. So just preparing as best as you can. But getting back to kind of your original, part of it, I mean, just being prepared. Hockey is one of those sports where you cannot walk in and not prepare. Otherwise, it is going to be so noticeable to a viewer. And they're going to be thinking, wow, this guy's not talking. He must not know any of the players that he's talking about.
No, so one thing I did want to hook on this because we interviewed Sean McDonough earlier in the season, who's one of the best to call hockey right now on television. And he mentioned that similar situation of you do not have time to look down at your notes. It is very barely. You could look down at the commercials and start telling those stories, but you have to have a whole bunch of you have to have everybody memorized on the lines, because you look down to grab a note or find out which player it is. You could look back up and there's a score. You can look back up and it's already been out of their possession for for 30 seconds, something like that. So it's good that great minds think alike in that sort of sense.
Yeah, that's probably the first and last time me and Sean McDonough will be using the same breath of air.
But I did want to ask as well, because now you've transitioned a little bit more with Midco Sports to heading towards co-hosting on shows, doing sideline reporting. But you started out, and you mentioned this in your journey, that you started out over in Grand Forks and back to Fargo being a sports anchor. And certainly Syracuse University produces a lot of those sports anchors, and a lot of other great colleagues of mine who have their passion as play-by-play are going into the sports anchor role, because that has a little bit more of a steadiness in the job in terms of employment. Because as you mentioned, you enjoy the change of pace on being able to be home more often and not work as long of seasons. But what did you take the most from your days of being a sports anchor that prepared you for on-air roles and play-by-play and or sideline reporting?
I think before you get to the part of how it helps you on air, I think being a weekend sports anchor, or even if you're the number 3 guy, it establishes the work ethic required to have success in this industry. And what I mean by that is you have to always be thinking of content. What are we going to put in our 6 o'clock show? What are we going to put in our 10 o'clock show that's going to make it different from the 6 o'clock show? If you have a 9 o'clock, then there's even more stuff that you have to worry about. And then you're constantly thinking ahead. Okay, can we save this for the next day? Can we? And I was very fortunate. I've been in a lot of really successful sports departments where they invested well in it, where it's 4 4 of us in the sports department. That's not every sports department. There are a lot out there that's maybe 1, 2 guys or gals, and it just makes things infinitely tougher, because if one person's not anchoring, or if they're on vacation, well, the other one's going to anchor, no matter if he's on his deathbed pretty much. I mean, you're working sick. That's just the way it is. But so I think just establishing that work ethic, always looking for that story that will fill that time, and that you can showcase and spotlight your community and in other communities beyond. Getting familiar with the area, like, there's nothing better than on Friday nights going out to high school football fields and getting connected with communities. I mean, I'm driving, hour, 2 hours sometimes to go shoot a high school football game, and they're like, "Oh, so cool that you're here." And that's just how you get connected. That's how you get people to kind of know you and appreciate you and value both you as an individual and the station that you're representing. So I think a lot of that kind of gets tied in. And then what it teaches you as far as like an on-air presence, just to develop that confidence that you need. Simply put, you're writing. I think you write so much as a sports anchor, and then when you become like a play-by-play guy, it's more off the cuff. So you can kind of intermingle those. When you're a sports anchor, you can do some things that are, off the cuff, ad-libbing and stuff like that. And then that helps you when you're doing play-by-play and stuff like that. And I was fortunate enough to walk in when I went to Grand Forks. Midco Sports was not a thing at that time. And the station I worked at in Grand Forks, they did all the UND hockey, basketball, football events. So I got, thrown right in there helping on broadcast, whether it be football, basketball. My boss at the time did most of the men's hockey. They did have a women's hockey team at the time, so I called a couple of the women's hockey games. So being able to kind of dip my toes in that a little bit. And that's why I would also encourage young sports broadcasters, like if there is that kind of 2-for-1 deal where, hey, it might not be the biggest market that you're going to for your first job, but if they happen to have some live sports that they do, high school, I almost prefer high school to kind of get yourself comfortable with that. That's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. I mean, right. Yeah, you might not be making the best money, but you're going to get things on tape from 2 kind of different areas within this business. And I think that's really beneficial.
Jody, you made a good point about traveling, an hour or 2 hours. For those a lot of the broadcasters know, travel's a part of the job, and sometimes it's about 50% of the job. And, getting, your health right, get enough sleep, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes into preparing for a broadcast. When you're traveling and you're going to a high school game, maybe it's an hour away. Is there anything that goes through your mind of like, do you ever think about like, okay, this is what I'm going to do better for this time? Or like, when you're driving, besides just focusing on the road, obviously, what do you like kind of, do you like prepare? Like, how do you prepare when you're driving, or like when you get to the, say, stadium? Like, what's the first thing you do? Like, do you just like kind of just see the scenes and just kind of like be like, wow, like I'm doing this? Or like, is there like a certain routine you do?
I think when I'm going out, maybe especially even for Friday nights, okay, what is the story within this game? Like, is it undefeated team taking on, defending state champ or something like that? Just, I'm trying to think of how I want to write to it, my first shot, and maybe what I want that first shot to be. Do I know it's going to be a great atmosphere? Is it 2 rivals, squaring off? So then maybe we want to get a good shot of some passion, emotion on their faces. Just different things like that to kind of differentiate yourself from the competition of how you want to write your lead in. So you're not just saying Fargo taking on Moorhead and here they go. Fargo, has won 3 of its last 4, taking on a Moorhead team that they haven't beat in 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Just thinking of ways that you can kind of set yourself apart from the competition that might not be thinking that same way. And it's a competitive industry. You guys know that. I mean, even trying to get jobs is really, really tough. And I feel fortunate that I've been able to fall into some good positions. Obviously I've went from Grand Forks to Fargo, so I've went about an hour in my career. I'm not looking to jump markets like, a lot of people do in this industry, but I think just going back to your original question, though, I don't want to get off topic too much.
You're good. Jody, I think we lost you there really quick. Do you mind repeating what you just said?
And when do I need to leave to make sure I get back in time to edit these highlights? Because that's always an issue too, because you're back there and you're scrambling and you're trying to edit as quickly as possible and stuff like that. So I guess the biggest thing when I'm driving, planning ahead, planning the shoot. And if you're going on a package shoot, you're also trying to think of, if I'm going to turn this 1.5-minute package on this kid, I know that wasn't your initial question, but this is something that always pops up into my head where I think more in the car when I'm going to a package shoot versus shooting highlights. Cause it's like, okay, I want to get this shot because I know I'm going to mention this. So I want a shot of this, and I know I'm going to mention this. So I'm going to want a shot of this, and I'm going to want to do it from this angle. That's my hope. Now, when you get there, it might be like, well, this isn't going to work the way that I thought. And then you have to do a little bit of juggling. But yeah, I think just constant planning, man. You always have to be thinking ahead in this industry, especially when you're kind of in that sports news station setting.
Now, one thing I want to dig deeper on that, at least I know you're thinking about the planning and those side of things, but in terms of game day rituals, because we cover an industry that's very superstitious, especially when you get to those hockey and baseball guys. When you're going on site or getting on site, especially without go, is there a beverage or a certain food you're eating beforehand? Like, I know a lot of us drink throat coat on the day of game days to try and make sure our vocal cords are intact. But is there a specific ritual or pregame meal that you go through?
I'm almost wondering if I should just go run to the fridge and grab. I have a Mountain Dew Kickstart, and I drink the pineapple, orange, mango Mountain Dew Kickstart. Not a sponsor for the show that I know of, but yeah, I slam one of those just to get my energy up a little bit. Oftentimes, when it gets to this part of the season, like I was dead sick a couple weeks ago, and I had to call UND hockey games Friday and Saturday, and I got sick. I did a game on Tuesday, a high school basketball game. Started kind of feeling crummy. Wednesday, I didn't probably get out of bed very much. Thursday felt like a disaster. Friday is when I had to call the game. I had to get up to Grand Forks and call the game. That's an hour drive up there. And but it was green tea, honey, lots of honey, and lemon juice in there. And I kind of swear by that. I think that's been a big routine, especially when you get into the winter months up here and there's just sickness everywhere and you're battling throat stuff. Like you guys said, just to keep that throat coated and your voice sounding good, even though it's gonna get worn out by the end of the weekend anyway. But yeah, that's probably the biggest ritual. As far as food, pizza, avoid pizza at all costs.
Oh, really?
Sometimes we get these crew meals where they bring you pizza and I'm like, anything but. Like I'll eat a sandwich, something where I'm not going to have that pain in my gut, calling a game. Is like, that is the worst. So eating healthy. And that's, something that I've developed throughout my time. When you're a college kid, you don't think about eating healthy. You just grab some junk and, slam some cheeseburgers or whatever and call it good, even in your first couple of years in the industry. But now that I've kind of matured a little bit and I want to, be able to be at my best, it's like, okay, I got to think about what I'm eating and putting into my body, because I want to have high energy. I don't want to be drugged down. And that's, you are what you eat. And I don't want to sound like a fitness coach here, but you do need to take care of yourself. Otherwise you're not going to be at your peak and people are going to notice.
I do have to ask as well, because I know you've grown up in this in your entire life of being up in the north and around North Dakota and Minnesota in that regard. Do you ever get used to the roads on those heavy winter storms or anything?
Those are, I've driven on some just crazy roads. Like literally that week that I was talking to you guys about that I was sick, there was a layer of ice on the interstate the whole way. So I drove like 40 miles an hour up there. But I needed to get there. No one else is going to call the game. It's not like we can call in Joe Schmo, hey, go do the game. No, I'm the guy because I was the backup to the guy. So it's me or it doesn't get on air. So drive safe. And yes, I mean, I've lived up here my whole life. You just need to be smart. You need to take your time. I get frustrated with, some guys with their pickups. They just come flying by you, and then you see them in the ditch 5 miles up and like, was it worth it, buddy?
Yeah.
just be smart about it. Leave on time. Obviously way ahead of schedule. By on time, I mean, give yourself enough time to get up there and get there safe. But, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with it too much. And then you get there and it's like, the ice was crazier on the interstate probably than the ice was inside the hockey rink. Like you could have played hockey on the interstate up there. So no, it's crazy. The roads are gnarly, man, but it's a great place to live, and it's passionate about, especially their UND hockey. NDSU football is massive here in Fargo. So there's some great football and great hockey up here and great sports all around.
My next question we have, Jody, is your favorite memory, or this could be memories, experiences with the teams, coaches, and players from your time at UND and NDSU. We just a quick little, maybe you had like a favorite. You said you worked with Carson Wentz, following his journey. Like, was that one of the, North Dakota State University obviously has a very, very good football team. So just explain that.
Yeah, I have a handful actually. We'll start with UND hockey. I covered them. They won the national championship in Tampa, Florida. I want to say it was maybe now 9 years ago or something like that. It was their head coaches that is their head coach now, Brad Berry, his first year. So I went down to Tampa to cover college hockey.
Wow.
That is peak living right there. You are walking the hockey rink in shorts and you're thinking, you're pinching yourself like, is this for real? And I'm covering a Frozen Four. So I wish they had the Frozen Four in Tampa every year. I think it's an awesome place to have it. Anyways, so that was an obviously amazing experience to kind of follow their journey and watch them win. I believe that was their 9th national title too. And just that program is just, it's so important to the people up there. UND hockey fans travel better than any college hockey fan base in the country. You can ask anyone. I mean, it's ridiculous. They'll be playing in Worcester, Massachusetts, and it'll be 90%, UND hockey fans, and then the rest are just stragglers. It's ridiculous. So
they're like the Packers of college hockey.
Pretty much. Yep, pretty much.
He had to fit that Packers mention in there. It's like,
he's like,
first off, interviewing one-on-one, you don't tell them that you're a fan of the rival team for the Vikings, and then you just have to jab it in there more, man. Joe.
When I said that, I did not think about this is how my brain functions. I completely forgot. I'm like, as soon as you said, I'm like, he said he was a Vikings fan.
No.
I just threw that in there. I should have said like a good. They're like a very. They like yeah. It's. Sorry, I've had a long.
I know a lot of Packer fans. One of my son's best friends, his dad's a Packer fan, and I'm like, we're happy for you.
You just keep it at a distance, right?
Yeah, you gotta keep your distance. Yeah. But other things. I mean, speaking of NFL, I mean, covering Carson Wentz, I remember going. My boss told me, we're going to send you to the NFL Combine with Carson. And I'm like, this is going to be kind of neat. And when you walk into Indianapolis's stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium, and I'm walking in, and it's like, I don't get like starstruck too much, but it is like all the heavy hitters that you watch on TV on ESPN and NFL Network are literally right there standing in line with you. Like, oh, Ian Rappaport right there. Oh, hey, Adam Schefter. Like, you're literally walking right next to these guys. So you get a little bit starstruck. All these GMs walking right next to you. These, top recruits, the guys that are going to be, the next players in the NFL in that draft are all like, just, you can go and touch them. And it was unbelievable to have that experience, to kind of follow Carson's journey. Then I got to go cover his first NFL game, the Eagles against the Cleveland Browns. RG3 was the quarterback for the Browns at the time, and Carson won his debut with Philly, and just to experience the Philly crowd. That was something definitely interesting. As a Vikings fan, again, I'm not a huge fan of the Eagles anymore because of what they did to us as we tried to get to the Super Bowl with Case Keenum and whatnot. But anyways, so I think that's one of my top highlights. Amy Olsen is a LPGA golfer. And when she was an amateur, so she was a college kid, she made the LPGA championship, the tournament, and she was leading it as an 18-year-old. And my boss called me. I was sitting on a beach in the summer, like out in Lakes Country over here in Minnesota. He's like, "Hey, Amy's leading the U.S. Women's Open, out in Colorado Springs." He's like, "You want to go cover it?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sweet." So go out there and get to cover her and her experience. She ended up kind of falling off a little bit and finished like 30th or something like that. But as an 18-year-old, that was ridiculous. A girl from Fargo, North Dakota, to have her experience that. So a lot of different events like that. NDSU men's basketball winning an NCAA tournament game. They beat Oklahoma. That was an awesome experience, getting to cover those out in Spokane and Seattle, Washington. Those are kind of the ones that come to the top of my mind.
Did you
go ahead, Joe.
Spencer. I was gonna say, did you go see them when they played Duke in 2019 with Zion and all them?
No, the guy that works literally just about 6 steps to my right was following the NDSU men's basketball team at the time, so he got to make that trip, and he's like, dude, standing next to Zion was just crazy. Like, he's so big.
Yeah, whenever you get to stand next to those NBA athletes, that's where you realize, like, I'm 6'1", and even if I am going to stand on the court next to any of those guys, I'm going to look small compared to the rest of them. Yeah. On kind of that accord, so you mentioned shifting over to Midco Sports and getting to do a lot more of live sports coverage and calling stuff at Midco Sports tonight in the weekdays, and also during the football season, you have Varsity Sports Live. And we had John Strong on for our season 1 finale, and we were talking about the shift that Major League Soccer had from all of their packages exclusively with Apple TV Plus, with a few games airing on Fox. But before then, they had regional sports networks that were covering the regular season games for their MLS teams. And I remember saying on that show, and I still kind of stand by it, where I feel as if the regional sports network model is dead because of Bally Sinclair and their bankruptcy issues going on, and how the NBA has acquired almost half of the local streaming rights for their teams and such. But it seems to me like with Midco Sports, especially starting in the last several years, it seems like you guys are, I don't know if thriving is the right word, but you guys are having much success around there, especially because you're more targeting the high school side of things. And there's not in North and South Dakota that the major sports you have are the college level. You may have some minor league teams over around in the hockey scene and baseball, but in that area of the country, you guys are able to tap into that market and be able to start something that is impactful. And you even mentioned it with going on site to cover high school games and parents telling you they're thrilled that you're giving exposure to their kids and covering them. So I'm sure you have some other great memories that you could delve into, but I'm interested to know, with Midco Sports and the perspective you have, what sort of challenges do you think you all are facing as a regional sports network?
Well, there are a few. I mean, obviously, like you guys mentioned, we've seen the regional sports network, the fall of Bally's and stuff like that. The interesting thing about us is, so we're on our cable network, so Midco Cable, and that's what we're on. And then we also, get onto a couple other random cable networks in some rural areas and stuff like that. So we kind of need people to buy cable from Midco in order to get Midco Sports. So that means stiff arming DirecTV, stiff arming, Dish Network, and all the other options that you have out there where a lot of people aren't even, getting cable. So that's one hurdle. And that's why a couple of years ago, we developed Midco Sports Plus, our app, and it's available on, your Roku, your smart TV, your phones, whatever. So we developed that app where you don't have to be a Midco cable subscriber to get that. And that has really enhanced just our relevancy of being able to reach other people, even if they don't have, Midco cable necessarily, that they can get our stuff. So we have contracts with the University of South Dakota, South Dakota State University, the defending FCS champs now. South Dakota State was able to win it this past year. And then the University of North Dakota, we have all their athletics, basketball, football, hockey, soccer. We do some games. We do some volleyball. We do some softball. Some of those are streaming only, so they're Midco Sports Plus exclusive. So being able to get subscribers through that has been really beneficial for us as a network to see those numbers, because it opens up different opportunities to make money, which is what we need to do to survive. We need to get, companies advertising with us. And so just trying to find our way to be relevant. And I think we are, like you mentioned, as far as our location, we're in a pocket where there isn't much competition per se. There's another cable network kind of like us that focuses basically just on high school. They do a little bit of college games for the smaller level, D2, NAIA. But other than that, like we kind of own it. And I'd like to think, we have a very professional looking broadcast. We crank out a top-notch product that people have just come to recognize. Like, okay, I know that I'm watching Midco because I know that this production quality is really, really good. So I think that's been a huge benefit for us, and a reason why people do go out of their way to make sure that they have Midco cable. I've run into a lot of people that say, man, we just have Midco cable because we want to watch Midco Sports. And I'm like, well, I love to hear that. And I just hope that you keep on you're paying your cable bill and stay with us. So, there's always going to be uncertainty just because you just don't know what's ever going to come next. The way technology is switching. One thing I should have mentioned with contracts, like now we got a partnership with the Summit League. So the Summit League, that's, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Omaha, Denver. So all those games are streamed through our app exclusively. So the Summit League is no longer streaming it for free on theirs. People have to come watch it on Midco Sports Plus and subscribe on there in order to watch their stuff. So again, another agreement that we just picked up this past summer. I don't know if I think it might be a 3-year deal, but being able to acquire those things and let those conferences know, hey, we have an app that we can carry all your stuff and make it a one-stop shop. And all those contract details are obviously way above my pay grade, but I know the importance of making sure that, we stay relevant in this space where a lot of people are just on-demand watchers. And that's what Midco Sports Plus is now. You can go on there, you go on that app, and you can just go search through games. Okay, what Midco or what Summit League game do I want to watch tonight? You have like 8 options on a given night between women's and men's basketball. Click. Okay, well, this game's getting to be a blowout. I'll go watch this one. Click.
Yep.
So I just think doing things like that is helping us continue to stay relevant along with our polished product that people have come to really, really admire.
That's awesome. Jody, as you know, I met you at the 2022 National Sports Media Association banquet. It was after the Legacy Night. We chatted briefly with some of the other interns. What does the National Sports Media Association, also known as NSMA, mean to you? Obviously, winning an award at the 2022 awards banquet for 2021.
Yeah, that was really special to get that call from Dave Gorin, and it's I think the part, like being the sportscaster of the year, it's not that part that gets me excited. It's that my peers voted on it. Like I've earned that respect from the guys that I compete with in that industry within the state. That means, more to me than anything and then obviously, just being able to be there, experience that, talk, meet with whether it's legends in the industry or whether it's guys like you, Joe, that we're just there trying to absorb knowledge just as much as I was, from some of these guys that are legends in the broadcast industry. Jim Nantz was there, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So being able to go up there and just say hi to him and exchange a few words with them and just let him know, how much, his work is appreciated and how much respect I have for him. That was really cool. And just the first class nature of the event that they put on is, it's awesome. You really do feel feel special to have the speaker the night before. I think it was Neil Leifer, an amazing photographer that spoke with us. I mean, he told us stories about he was really tight with Muhammad Ali and had some unbelievable pictures with Muhammad Ali, and then whether it's old NFL stuff, but he was great to hear from, and just to hear the people speak up in front of everyone, and just knowing that this is not an industry that's for everyone. I mean, if you're in it and then you have family as well around it, I mean, we all can appreciate the sacrifice that not just that person that's up there on the stage gets, or that they've sacrificed, but their family, their wives that have been by their side, and their kids that have been like, oh, daddy's not home, he's working again. I mean, it's not an industry for the faint of heart, guys. And to know and to see those guys get recognized for that hard work that they put in, and it is really, really special.
It absolutely is. And that reminds me, about a week or two ago. So I have a role with the University of Alabama has a chapter for the NSMA, and we had Eli Gold, the legendary voice of the Crimson Tide, come in and chat with us. And I asked him about that. How did you achieve that work and home life balance? And he mentioned it's incredibly hard. He remembered one time he was calling a game out in California, and he promised his daughter he would be there for a dance recital of hers, because he had missed so many, and his flight got canceled. He was in Denver, connecting flight, and his flight got canceled, and he had to get on the phone and call him. But he mentioned when he get back home to Birmingham, he opened the door. I think he may have hugged his wife or something, put down his bags, sat down on the couch, and they watched the tape of his daughter's recital and everything. That was the first thing he did. Nothing else. Did not unpack, did not eat, nothing like that. He prioritized that first. And you were even mentioning to us beforehand that that your wife is, if I'm not mistaken, it was outside of the country. Yeah, your wife is visiting Spain right now, and she doesn't get to do that as much necessarily during the fall because of how busy you are with high school football and all the other things. So I guess this is also a chance for you to talk about, as you probably do a lot, but I guess to get wife points, how solid of a rock has your wife been through this process?
She's amazing. And that's why, like, when she asked to do a trip like this, she's never been, to Europe or really outside of the country, outside of Canada and Mexico. So I didn't hesitate, because guys, every Friday night for basically my whole career, in this industry, which is now, 16 years, but she's been with me since we met in 2009. So 15 years we've been together. Friday nights in the fall, I've been gone pretty much all of them. And it's tough. And there are other obviously random nights. Then there's extended time during the Summit League men's and women's basketball tournaments where I could be in Sioux Falls for 4 or 5 days. We do the NSIC Division II men's and women's basketball tournaments down in Sioux Falls too. Again, gone for 4, 5, 6 days in a row. And now with having a child too, now just having a child, he's 5. But just the way that can take an emotional toll on someone. I mean, it's tough. I mean, and just you get lonely, and I know that she's sacrificed a lot to help me, continue to have pursue this as a job and a career. And you have to make sure you're on the same page. That's why we're always, checking in with each other. Hey, I know this is tough on you. But like you guys said, when I get home from calling a game, or that next morning, Saturday morning, and Sundays, it's basically, hey, I'll take the little man, you get your breaks in when you can, because I mean, I'm not saying it's like, oh my gosh, hard work, but raising a child can be tough. And just being able to give that balance to her, and continue to show her appreciation, because I wouldn't be where I am today without her. I mean, I worked alongside her as well. She was a former news anchor. She was the intern at the TV station in Grand Forks at WDAZ. That's how we met. So she was a news reporter alongside me. Then we anchored on the weekends. She was the weekend news anchor. I was the weekend sports anchor. And then obviously getting married to someone within the industry, she understands, kind of what I go through, and kind of, why I need to be on my game, why I need to work late at night sometimes. So she understands probably better than most because she's been in the industry before. She's since gotten out about 5-6 years ago. But yeah, I can't credit her enough. She helps me write stories. That's a huge benefit too of having a former news anchor, news reporter as a wife. She's willing to help me in any way that I can, and I'm very extremely blessed to have her.
Now, the important question: when does your wedding anniversary fall on?
June 16th.
Okay, good. So that was purposeful to avoid the football season or any of that kind of stuff. So that's when stuff settles down. So perfectly timed, timed, of course.
But then we had a baby boy on in November. So football season.
Yeah, that's right in the middle of it too. Yeah, that's. I'm sure,
actually, it's right after the state championships in North Dakota high school football, so it works out.
Okay, so that was perfectly timed yet again. So that way it worked itself out. So to one of the final question we make sure to ask all of our guests is we quote Dave Gorman, who we all talk about on every single show about what he means to us. But he has an adage that he quoted from one of our other colleagues that talks about it. It's not what you know, and it's not who you know. It's who knows you, and what can they say about you, whether you're in person with them or behind the scenes or across another state line. So on that accord, and you talked a little bit about some of the great friends you've had in the industry and the colleagues you get to talk with about, and I'm sure you could think of other relationships that have meant the most to you, but what have you found has been the most effective method for you to build meaningful relationships in the sports world?
Ooh, good question. I think just being genuine, and it's interesting because it is such a competitive business. But when you think about it, guys, like, do I need to be a jerk to someone just because I'm trying to get the story better than him, or I'm, chasing the same interview as him? I think that's always been at the core for me. Like, yes, it's competitive, but I'm going to be nice because I never know if I'm going to be working alongside this guy. That it's interesting because I interned in Fargo in 2007. And the two guys that are working in my office now at Midco were working in that office in 2007. I could have been a jerk and think I'm never going to see these guys again. Then I probably won't be at Midco anyways because they were, a couple of the guys in charge of hiring me. So building those connections, being genuine with those guys, complimenting their work and not just saying, hey, that was a great story. No, actually tell them what you liked about it. Because I just like building people up. I understand that there are people that are coming to this market that are weekend sports anchors that might only be here for a couple of years. So why not make a positive impact on their life and tell them, hey, I really like that you did this on this story. And, hey, maybe you could work on this a little bit. If you ever need any help, I'm one of those guys that I'm willing to help in any way that I can because I've been helped by others where, you just don't feel like it's necessary that they've gone out of your way to help you. So I want to pass that along to other people. But I've benefited from such great mentors. Like I talked about Pat Sweeney, former North Dakota Sportscaster of the Year. Dom Izzo was my boss at WDAY, former North Dakota Sportscaster of the Year. Like I've learned from some really knowledgeable, Dom is one of the hardest working guys that I've ever met. And Pat, I credit him for just his incredible professionalism and telling me one of the biggest things and most important things that I always carry today is making sure that you pronounce their names right, especially those high school kids, because their mom and dad, that might be the only time they ever get on TV in their lives. And they might be pressing the record button on that DVR that night. And if you butcher that kid's name, you're going to kind of feel like crap. So I think that's also something that I just treasure. And again, those learning lessons that you've gotten from people in this industry as you've continued to go along. And I want to be that guy that passes it along to those other people, humble them as well. Like, hey, you're doing a great job, but you need to make sure that you're getting your hands in everything, get exposed to everything. Don't just be a face on TV. Go shoot your own stories, go edit your own stories. If you don't know how, learn. There are ways that you can learn. And heck, I'm even here at your disposal to help too. So finding ways to help other people in the industry. And that's honestly, that's one of my passions. I've worked I've been at Midco since 2017. I've trained, I think, 3 interns. And when we hire our interns, it's not like Jody's assigned to it. It's just I volunteered. Like, I want to do it, because then if I train him, then I know that he's going to be trained the way that I want him to, and he's going to, work hard and understand why we're doing these things. So I've kind of taken ownership of our internship program, which is no longer going on. COVID, I think, kind of axed that for the time being. But I like mentoring young people in this industry because it's fun. It's a fun job, but it comes with its challenges, and they need to be prepared for it.
That's so true. It's nice to see it's nice to hear that you just volunteered, not like, I got to sign. It's like, no, I want to do it. That's, and that's what's great about the sports world is people are willing to help. And I think that's why I wanted to work in it. And so is Spencer. We always want to, everyone we've interviewed on the call, I've always was so thankful and, very helping and wanting to help us. So it's really nice to know that. Before we sign off, I also have a few notes. If you would like to support the podcast, download or visit Buy Me a Coffee. Again, that is what I said. It is the app called Buy Me a Coffee. Look us up on the Call podcast. The link to view our page will also be linked in the description. Jody and Spencer, do you have any last words for us before we sign off?
I would just say, sports broadcasting, man, doing this as a career, what a life to get paid to talk about sport.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you probably get that sentiment from a lot of people. It's a job where you sacrifice a lot. You miss a lot of holidays. You miss a lot of, friends and events and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, I've went to my job every day thinking, man, this is really cool. Big props to that. And big props to you guys for doing what you're doing and kind of getting out there and meeting new people within the industry and kind of networking. That's awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time out of your more chaotic schedule right at the moment with taking care of your kid and such. But I know this is a little bit of downtime for you between this and basketball and everything. But here's to seeing you in Winston-Salem sooner than later for another honor for North Dakota Sportscaster of the Year. It should be a lot of fun, and we'll make sure we keep up with more of the stuff that you're doing as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem. And again, thank you, Jody. Thank you, everyone. And this has been Joe and Spencer. We'll see you next time on the Call.